So, hello, prospective FLV students. My name is Andrew Jezik. I am the foreign lecturer at the Faculty of Lazar Vukatic English Department. The purpose of this video is to give you some brief insight into the spoken element of the entrance exam. So, we'll talk a little bit about the format, we'll talk about what we're expecting from you, and give you some examples of the types of questions that you may be asked. So essentially, the spoken element of the exam lasts about 5 to 10 minutes and is comprised of a series of questions of slightly different types. So what we're essentially looking for, and what we want you to show, is a display of fluency. So the more fluidly or fluently you can answer these questions with a suitable level of detail, then the better grade you're going to have. So what we're looking for here is, when I say suitable, is an answer that provides some detail. You don't need to write a novel, but you also don't want to be too short in your answers. Now, we're also not trying to create a extremely pressurized situation. So if we ask a question and we're not satisfied with the response, or let's say there's some downtime and we want to hear a little bit more about it, then there's always the possibility of follow-up questions. So when we think about the type of questions that you may encounter at this exam, generally the questions are not going to be known in advance, but they'll come from one of four categories. So I would say that some of those categories are a little bit easier or more natural questions, and those are going to come generally at the beginning. We often call these general or personal questions. And what we're really looking for is for you to give us a little bit of insight into something that's pretty normal or part of your, everyday or regular life. Another type of question is related to past events and experiences. And here, of course, we're looking forward to use some of the past tense structures, but also tell us in a relatively fluent manner about some relevant experience that you've had in relation to the question asked. There are also future questions about intentions or plans that you may have. This will, of course, allow you to talk about the future. So here we have a combination of present with the general or the personal questions, the past, and the future. Finally, there are questions that are often of a slightly more complex nature. I would call these thematic or opinion questions, and that's the fourth category. So in your time on the exam, you can expect to get at least one question from each of these forms, or from each of these types, in a 5 to 10 minute period. So to give you a sense of what kind of answers we expect from you, what I like to give you is some sample responses and some sample questions. So generally, we'll be sitting in front of you, we'll have a list of questions, and we will select these fairly randomly to ask to each candidate who is attending the spoken element of the exam. So what I'm going to do is simply point to one of these questions and try to give a fairly suitable answer to it, similar to what we would be expecting from you. Together, these questions, or my responses to these questions, will typically be between 30 seconds and a minute and a half. And if you're capable of doing that several times, each of these questions, and you could get more than one question from the form, then you'll have done a sufficient job on the exam. So, let's start with the personal or general type questions. So, here, let's pick one. So this question is, can you please describe one of your favorite hobbies? And now I will give my suitable answer. So, one of my favorite hobbies, I would say, is hiking. I've done it since I was quite young in life, and it's something that I find very rewarding. I've always enjoyed getting out into nature, and I think we live in a country where there are lots of opportunities for that. Not only does hiking give me good exercise, and I enjoy that aspect of it, but it allows me to experience different landscapes, to travel a bit, to see new places, and every time I do a certain path or reach a certain point, I get a sense of accomplishment. Um, I like being in nature, seeing the animals and the different plants that are out there. So whether it's I'm climbing a mountain and getting a beautiful view, or I'm walking to a waterfall, which is an exceptional sight, or simply taking a path through the forest, I feel like hiking is a very rewarding experience. And because of that, I try to get out as much as possible. Sometimes it's, closer to where I live, like Fruška Gora, or sometimes it's a national park or a natural, area of interest, either in Serbia or abroad. I pretty much like hiking everywhere. Sometimes camping is included. And part of it is just the excitement. You never know what you're going to see. So I started with my family, and I've continued that tradition on my own sometimes and with friends. So that would be a fairly suitable response to that question. Of course, like I said, you may get prompts that will push you in a certain direction. So if you started that question and you kind of hit a spot, you may get a follow-up question from one of the interviewers, like, okay, so you mentioned you like hiking, so where do you want, do you have any trips planned, or what's one of your favorite places to go? Something like that. So our job is often to both examine you, but also to kind of push you in the right direction, or help you along so that you can find your answer. So then we have past experiences. So let me just point to a question there, and then we'll do another sample answer. Okay, so please tell us about an interesting excursion you have been to relatively recently. And now the answer. So, I do like to travel, and I've been on quite a few excursions in the recent past. I think that one of the most interesting trips that I made recently was a trip to Savannah, Georgia. Even though I'd lived close to that area for a part of my life, I never really had a chance to spend much time there. And Savannah is a city that is a tourist destination. I mean, it's well known because it's supposed to be a very pretty city, to have a lot of greenery, and to be a pleasant place to visit. So that's what I knew about it before I went there. I think that one of the most interesting things about the trip that I took there is there's a significant historical element that's well built into the city that I wasn't necessarily expecting to see, and which is both surprising and intriguing. The city is, of course, beautiful. There are a lot of old trees, old oak trees, hundreds of years old, a lot of parks, a lot of green space. It's on the river. There's a lot of nice architecture. You have various homes and buildings coming from architectural styles covering 200 years. But for me, the most surprising, interesting element was really that historical element. I did not know when I went there that the city was built on a plan or a grid before it could be built sporadically. Most cities just pop up and then they start happening. This was actually made according to a plan, so I found that out. I also, found that out because historical information is everywhere. So not only is the city arranged on this grid, but you can walk from, one park to another park to another park between houses and streets with some historical character. And it seems that wherever you turn, there's a historical plaque about a certain battle or a certain event. Is part of one of many wars or conflicts that happen in that area. So you get to know not only the city, but a lot of its characters. Sometimes it's a darker past, like attachments to slavery. You can even go into some of the houses or some of the museums, which offer even further insight about the unique character of Savannah. So I was looking forward to going there, and there was something there that I didn't expect. So in addition to it being pretty, I found that I learned something about not only that place, but how it connects with the wider area and with, wider events in history. So that's pretty typical answer. Probably a little bit on the long side, but I'm trying to give everybody a bit of an example of, where you could go with these questions. So let's take a look at a future question. That's another category, and so we'll just pick one here that might work. Here, often these are pretty straightforward. So this one says, what are your plans for the upcoming summer? Okay, and that answer. Well, for this summer, I think it's particularly difficult to make plans. We are currently facing the coronavirus, and in this situation has changed a lot of the ways that we travel and move around and socialize and commute. So some of my plans may not turn out the way I want them to. I mentioned that because originally my plan for the summer was to go to Greece. I've been to Greece one time before, but there's still much of the country that I haven't seen. So I was really looking forward to relaxing a bit, spending a few weeks in a part of Greece which I've never been to, which is an island not so far from Athens called Evia. There's a lot of natural beauty there. There are mountains, of course, olive groves and vineyards, and of course wonderful beaches. And so I was really looking forward to just getting into a natural space and spending some time, on the beach, going in the water. But I had some personal projects I was also planning and I'm still hoping to accomplish. I would like to do a lot of reading with all of the exam obligations and other obligations that have kind of occupied me in the recent weeks and months. It's been hard to, pick up a book. So I feel I can catch up on maybe some literary classics, maybe get some recommendations from some friends, but I'd really like maybe while I'm in Greece or, while I'm here in Novi Sad to pick up a book, get some reading done. It's been a while since I've had that chance. And finally, to do a little bit of writing, I'd like to improve on my writing. So I'd also like to get a chance to, hopefully we'll get some source material, have some experience that may help in that writing process, either with reading books or traveling, but really taking my time to work on a few different aspects of writing, and possibly work on some languages, not only English or Serbian, but some other languages too, that I'd, like to get a little bit better at. So there you go. That's a future question. And then I think one of maybe the hardest questions here are the opinion questions. So I'm just going to choose one sample question, or I'm just going to pick it actually and try so that I don't know it ahead of time, and then try to give a suitable answer there. So, okay, so this is, what is your opinion on your generation's use of social media? And go. So here's the answer. Well, I feel a little bit mixed about social media. There are, of course, disadvantages and advantages to not only how my generation uses it, but also how I use it. So I could probably throw some personal experience in. I think that as far as the positives go, if we start there, one thing that I really like about social media is it allows me to communicate with friends and family in ways that I wasn't able to before. This is particularly important, I think, in the current time. A lot of us are spending a lot of time at home, and it's easy to lose track of what other people are doing, and you can get lonely, or you can feel isolated, and social media gives us the opportunity to share a bit of our lives with others. So, I can exchange messages with my friends, I can post pictures, I can post ideas, comments. We can have conversations in written form or on text or do video chats through these programs. So it allows me also to keep track of events. These days, I can't go to a concert. I can't go to a museum. So normally social media is good for that. I get made aware of that. I bump into things. I get ideas for books. I get ideas for music. Albums that I've never heard, bands that I've never heard. So I think it's a great avenue for information, and information sharing and experience sharing. So normally I get recommendations from that, and I think that's a great positive. And these days, from friends or family, I also, get a bit of experience that's not mine, which I feel like I need in these kind of isolated times. And then I can maybe use those later on when times are different. As far as negatives, I think we can all get a little bit too caught up in social media. I feel like that no matter what social media we're talking about, whether it's Instagram or Facebook, I feel that sometimes we spend too much time on these social media platforms. It can become almost addictive. If you post things, you want feedback, you want likes, you want comments. And I see a lot of, sometimes it's me, sometimes it's my friends or people out in the streets, and they have their phones in front of them, and, they have these applications open, and they're trying to, they get just too caught up in following them all the time, and then they start losing track of their own life a little bit. And then I think, the other negative side is that people don't always post the truth, so there's a lot of, doctored images or changed images, or people putting one side of themselves forward and then kind of hiding the other part. So I think there's a little bit of falsehood in that, and I think it can be misleading, especially for our younger generations. And done. So these are clearly not the only questions that are on that list, and I think these are a little bit on the long side as far as potential answers go. So you don't have to feel like you need to talk as much as I've done in these answers, but hopefully it has given you an idea of how to proceed, what kind of questions to expect. There is more information on our faculty's website. You can see here, Fakultet za pravne I poslovne studije, Dr. Lazar Vrkatić. So I suggest, or I encourage you to look there if you're interested. Hopefully in the near future, there'll also be an opportunity to come to see the faculty in person and get a sense of what the facility looks like and what we have for students. So just a reminder of what you can expect. To re-emphasize, the spoken part of the exam will take about 5 or 10 minutes. There are questions dealing with the personal and general everyday life, questions related to your past or the past, questions related to the future, often with your intentions or plans, and finally, some questions that might look into, what you think about certain contemporary topics or ideas. So I wish you luck and hope that we will be seeing you soon or hearing from you soon as future applicants to either the English program or other programs at our faculty. Thank you for listening. Good luck and goodbye.